Welcome, everyone. My name is Sherry Barnabas, and I will be the moderator on today's call entitled Maximize Your IBMI Investment. Your presenter for today is Mr. David Brault. David is LANSA's product manager and has over 20 years of experience streamlining, optimizing, and extending core business applications with modern Windows, web, and mobile technology. Now, before I turn the call over to Dave, there are a couple of things to note. The attendee control panel is located in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and this is where you can ask questions or get my attention if you have any problems during the presentation. Also, I will be sending out a broadcast message that contains a dial-in number and a passcode for this event, just in case you need to switch over from the VoIP to the phone for any reason. Now, last but not least, all attendees that participate through the entire presentation will find out how they can get a choice of a LANSA USB car charger or mobile phone cradle as a thank you for attending today's webinar. So without further ado, your presenter for today, Mr. David Brault. Dave, you may begin.
Thanks so much, Sherry, and welcome everybody to this presentation on how to preserve your investment in your IBMI and maximize your potential. I always like to kick off my sessions with a quote that ties back to the subject at hand. And today I'm going to quote a lyric from the rock band U2, where Bono says that every generation gets a chance to change the world. So if you're wondering how does this relate to information technology, well, take a second to think about the essence of computer programs and how they really haven't changed. They receive an input and they respond with an output. What has changed over the decades is how each generation interacts with these programs. Next, think about the relentless parade of new technologies that's constantly being built as the next breakthrough, yet if you think about it, very few truly disrupt the status quo and alter any sort of business or social landscape. But with every generation, there is that one technology that does emerge and becomes disruptive. And what I mean by that is it becomes a disruptive technology in the sense that it forces businesses to react and to have an answer and to have some sort of solution. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the IBMI companies out there are humming the Beatles tune, "Nothing's going to change my world," while all these disruptive technologies are taking hold, which is really unfortunate because for those types of companies, IT is no longer a source of innovation or competitive advantage, but now rather it's a source of stagnation and a liability. So if you want to be able to preserve your investment in the IBMI and maximize your potential, you really have to be able to deal with change, and in particular, be able to deal with disruptive technologies. Now, while we can't stop the ripple effect that disruptive technologies cause on a business, what we can do is minimize it. And we can do so with a sound application architecture and agile development tools. Now, the LANSA platform is based on 4 key elements, architected to minimize the impact of disruptive technologies. Those 4 pillars are the metadata repository, a business-focused 4GL or 4th generation language, an independent data services layer, and a visual framework. So these 4 pillars, they work in conjunction with each other to significantly reduce the cost of a company's software development lifecycle, which we'll touch on in just a moment. So the first pillar that we'll discuss is LANSA's high-level language. Now, ideally, for IT managers to be able to deliver, all the requests that are placed upon them, they need to staff themselves with developers that are business-focused. Now, contrary to popular beliefs, programmers do need sleep, and they only have a finite amount of bandwidth for which they can spend each day on application development. Now, because of this, as you can see here in this diagram, companies need, they need their developers to spend a majority of their time on understanding the business issues that plague the company and working on how to solve those problems. Now, obviously, developers still need to properly document and test their work, whether they want to or not. And ideally, the smallest portion of any developer's total bandwidth should be the time spent on learning and dealing with new technology. But what happens in the real world is that we're staffed with developers that are technology focused, which means developers spend too much time learning and dealing with new technology. And when that happens, right, it really eats into the time allotted for the other more important areas. Now at LANSA we call this change in resources technology squeeze, and ultimately produces 2 unfavorable byproducts. First, IT managers will have to hire additional staff or some highly paid consultants to help address the workload. And second, project delivery dates either get missed, they get pushed back, or sometimes they get dropped altogether. Now, before we leave this slide, I do want to make it perfectly clear, though, that technology squeeze is not the developer's fault. The problem is really a derivative of rapidly changing, very complex technologies and development environments that dominate today's marketplace. If you think about it, developers have absolutely no choice but to be technology focused, as all these new hot features and best practices come in and out of favor very quickly. So how can IT managers and CIOs and IT directors shed technology squeeze and start to make their developers more productive? Well, the answer is to reduce development productivity. To increase development productivity. LANSA helps companies rid themselves of technology squeeze by reducing the complexity of development. So every company on the call here today wants to get to the right side of this picture. They want to be able to modernize and extend and integrate new technology with our existing applications. Now, this maze diagram does a great job of illustrating the source of technology squeeze. It's an overwhelming amount of different development languages and protocols and development frameworks, etc. Now, LANSA's language, called RDML, is a high-level language optimized for building commercial applications that deploy natively to the IBM, Windows, or Linux with your choice of interface, 5250, Windows, web, or mobile. Now, because RDML, which stands for Rapid Development and Maintenance Language, now because it's a 4GL, it's an easier language to learn, and it actually delivers significant productivity gains. For instance, just one line of RDML code could generate up to anywhere near 30 lines of 3GL code, depending upon what that line of code does. But what really makes LANSA's language so special is that, unlike, say, maybe Java or PHP, RDML is not ported from a different platform. RDML was architected from the ground up for RPG developers from day one. And because it was intended for IBM developers, that's the reason why IBM developers find it easy to learn. It can become very productive quite quickly. Now, besides building applications, another ongoing challenge for every company is maintaining the validation rules and the business logic that secures the integrity of our data. When business rules and validation logic is hard-coded into our programs, what you're going to do is going to increase our maintenance burden, because chances are same rules reside in multiple programs. So when it's time to make a business rule change, and that's replicated across, say, 15 different programs, well, that becomes a lot of work. And LANSA's metadata repository promotes an entirely different approach when it comes to application development, because what it allows you to do is store all your business rules, store all your validation logic in one spot. That being said, LANSA's repository is more than just a static data dictionary. It actually sits between your applications and your databases, and it acts as both the custodian as well as the enforcer of these rules. So the enforcement portion actually takes place at the something that we call a data services layer, which we'll talk about next. So the LANSA data services layer is there to protect and serve your data by surrounding all your database files and tables with traffic officers that monitor what goes into your database, ensuring that all the validation checks, all the business rules are checked and met before inserting or updating or deleting any kind of record in your database file or table. Now, since day one, every LANSA written application has been able to take advantage of the data services layer, but more recently, we've opened up the repository to other environments as well. So today, any program that you write can take advantage and be protected by the LANSA repository. Well, why is that important? Well, it's not that uncommon for LANSA customers to report back to us a 90% reduction in their application maintenance in terms of cost and effort, because, again, the repository and the data service layer does so much for them. Now, developing visual applications that meet the needs of today's modern user can be a real challenge. Just ask any developer. Programmers sometimes struggle with the interface design and often miss the mark with their very first Windows or web application. So the last pillar that we'll talk about today is LANSA's visual framework, which helps developers get it right the first time. Now, the Visual LANSA framework makes developers extra productive by providing ready-made application shells, if you will, that assist in the prototyping. It assists in the design, the deployment, and the maintenance stages of the application development lifecycle. So the visual framework provides the menu structure. It provides for the searching mechanism for the work area, where we can now bring together and display disparate sets of information about an item onto a single screen. Now, most important, at least in terms of development, is that all the plumbing code required to connect all these panels is already there for us. It's already done. So a lot of time, developers could be wasting time writing what we call plumbing code. This is code that adds little or no business value to the application, but it has to be there for intercommunication between different widgets and parts of the application. This all goes away when you use a visual framework. And last but not least, because the framework enforces UI design concepts that follow standard conventions, most users will immediately feel pretty comfortable with the application. Now, LANSA's framework comes bundled with a special prototyping wizard that builds the infrastructure for us, basically creating and integrating all those different panels and tab sheets we just saw before without us as developers having to write a single line of plumbing code. Now, after running through the wizard, it's pretty cool. LANSA provides us with a pretty near fully functioning working prototype that we can then share with our end users and share with management to one, help paint the vision of what's to come, and two, probably most important, gather feedback early before we dive into the development phase of the project. So unlike traditional prototypes, this one is not a throwaway. The prototype gradually gets converted into a real final application, and you complete the application by finally replacing all the prototype's parts with real components. So what can we plug into the work area of this visual framework? Well, to begin with, you can embed green screens that have been refaced, and I will talk about this more, how that's possible in a little bit. You can plug in third-party controls, like in this instance we plugged in a Google Maps control. You can snap in any LANSA-built component and then access data from any database inside your organization. Tabs can also host web applications, and it doesn't matter what they are written in. It can be written with LANSA, it could be an ASP page or a PHP, just a static HTML. It doesn't matter what that web app was written in. The visual framework also provides us with some free controls. One of those free controls is something called a document management plugin. And what that allows you to do is snap this plugin into the framework, and instantly users can now associate documents to customers or products or whatever they're working with inside the application just by dragging and dropping items inside this tab sheet. It's pretty cool. You can also use tabs to generate reports from the data that you got from the search results above, and then obviously let your users export that information out to like Excel. Another free plugin in the visual framework is something called the notes control, and sort of like similar to the document control, this is another plugin that's free, comes with the framework, but it allows you to now attach notes to any record in the database, but most importantly, without modifying any of your files or tables to do so. Now, one of the best features of the visual framework is that it can be deployed as either a native Windows application or a web browser application. It's really your choice. As you can see here, they look pretty much identical. Because of this flexibility, how it benefits companies is that we can now focus on functionality, and we can focus on business issues instead of learning the underpinnings of dealing with Windows versus web and trying to figure out what we should do. Now, when we add all these pillars together, what the LANSA platform brings is significant cost reduction over the entire software development lifecycle, especially ongoing application maintenance and enhancements. So with the LANSA platform, what we're able to do is spend more time up front in the early phases, phase 1 and 2, and perform a really thorough job on requirements gathering and system design and database design and business process design. With a lot of the other tools out there, developers are forced to hurry through phases 1 and 2 because they know how lengthy that phase 3 is going to be, so they want to get to coding as soon as they can. which obviously, if you look at the diagram here, that negatively impacts phase 5, which is the maintenance and ongoing enhancements as you move the application forward. Now, Visual LANSA is the only IDE, or integrated development environment, that you're ever going to need for rapid application development of Windows Web and IBM applications. So no other mainstream rapid application development tool is so open, so flexible, enables you to write code that runs free of underlying operating systems or database technology, or how you want to display the data, what interface you want to use to display the information. Visual LANSA also provides wizards and code assistance, IntelliSense, autocomplete, everything else you'd expect from a modern IDE. And from Visual LANSA, you get to use LANSA's 4GL language to code your application and code up the process flow and all of your interface logic. You also get to work with the repository from inside Visual LANSA and populate all of your reusable business logic and validation rules. You get to choose which backend server you want to deploy to, again, IBM, or Windows, or Linux. You can create or choose which database files you want to import into any number of the popular databases that are out there. And really, you get to decide which screen type that you'd like to design for. Do you want to do a web page? Do you want to do Windows? Do you want to run on a tablet or a smartphone, or even, again, 5250? 5250 still has its place. Do you want to build that type of interface? If you think about the last 25 years, a lot has changed, and we've seen some amazing advancements in technology during that span. So again, not only has LANSA evolved with the times, but we've really transitioned into a company that provides technology insurance for our clients, meaning that we've developed a software strategy that successfully navigates you through the different waves of these disruptive technologies. So again, you can continue to focus on your business instead of technology. So let's take a look at how LANSA's handled some of the more recent disruptive technologies over the past 25 years. The first disruptive technology that I personally remember and I personally encountered was Windows 3.1. This was really, again, this is my opinion, the OS that really ushered in the era of the graphical user interface, using a mouse for point and click and drag and drop. And probably most important to our environment was moving cycles off the server and putting those cycles now on the desktop computer. And it didn't stop with 3.1. Obviously, Windows kept getting stronger and more popular with Windows 95, XP, Vista, Windows 7, and now with Windows 8. All right, maybe not so much with Vista and Windows 8, but I think you get the gist here. Anyway, LANSA took this disruptive technology and we took it head on, and we enabled that fourth generation language called RDML and that data services layer to be able to deploy to Windows. Same language and same repository. And with each iteration of Windows, LANSA continued to incorporate that new look and feel of the operating system into the application. So you were able to build up-to-date Windows applications. Even with version 13 of LANSA, Windows apps can now take advantage of DirectX, which allows you to start creating stunning animations and stunning graphical interfaces for Windows 7 and Windows 8 computers and applications. Take RORC, for example. RORC is a customer of ours, stands for Retail Owner Research Company. They built, or they should say they build, software for retail stores. And what they decided to do is they decided to redevelop their 15-year-old Microsoft Visual Basic system from the ground up. Why? Because they were just getting tired of continually have to rebuild perfectly good code and maintain multiple versions of their source every time Microsoft decided they wanted to change something. So RORC selected Visual LANSA. So this is a company that never had an IBM I before. They selected Visual LANSA and rolled out their new point of sales and back office solution to over 700 retail locations across the United States who currently have a mixture of different Windows operating systems. But now, with LANSA, RORC can maintain a single set of source code and be able to deploy to all the different versions of Windows that they need to deploy to, which they couldn't do before with Visual Basic because they need to have several versions of code. I just think it's amazing that, again, if I get a little personal here, my first job out of college was for a LANSA shop. And I built green screen applications. And to think that 25 years later, The same language that I use to build green screen applications can now be used to build a point of sale, like you see on the screen right now, program that runs on a standalone point of sale device at a checkout line. It just boggles my mind. It's just a great example of technology insurance. Now, after Windows, the next disruptive technology that really turned things upside down for a lot of us was the web. And I'm not talking about, static company web pages here. I'm talking about websites that needed to serve up real-time data and be able to perform transactions against their back-end system. Now, I think a lot of people forget that LANSA pioneered transactional web development on this platform. Back in 1997, when IBM wanted to showcase the then, I think it was still called the AS400 then, as being this robust transactional web server, IBM came to us. They came to LANSA to build the LANSA AS400.com website using LANSA technology. And when IBM put on this series of road shows to promote the AS400 as this incredible web serving machine, all the customer examples that they talked about during these road shows, LANSA shops. So again, we've been doing this for a long, long time. We were pioneers in this arena. For example, the next scheduled update of LANSA will allow customers to easily create responsive design web apps. Now, if the term responsive web design is something that's new to you, don't feel bad. I promise you're not alone, and in about 25 seconds, you'll know exactly what it is. So responsive web design is simply this. It's a website style that adjusts gracefully, I guess gracefully is the important word there, to fit onto a desktop, a tablet, and smartphone browsers. Have you ever pulled up a website on your smartphone and it's just a tiny version of what you see on your desktop? Well, that's not a responsive design website. A responsive website looks good no matter what you're looking at it with, so whether it's a phone or a tablet or a desktop. So why is this important? Well, just look at some of these stats. 55% of users say they use their cell phones to go online. And of that 55%, 31% said they use their phone more than a computer or other kind of device. 74% of mobile visitors will actually abandon a site if it takes more than 5 seconds to download. So if you're going to be sending down your big desktop browser application to a mobile phone, it's going to take too long and people are going to go somewhere. So you want to make sure that your mobile web apps fit properly on the screen and are optimized to load quickly. And again, LANSA is working really hard with our next release to really allow you to utilize responsive design inside your web apps as easily as possible without getting down into the nitty-gritty. I'm sure everybody's heard by now that the world's gone mobile. This is, again, one of the more recent disruptive technologies that we've encountered. Once again, I think people forget, they don't realize that LANSA has been supporting mobile for a long time now. Maybe people don't remember because it was called wireless back in the day when we got started, as you can see here from this LANSA advertisement from back in 2002. So, as a matter of fact, about 2 years after that advertisement came out, one of our customers, the city of Portage, used LANSA to build a mobile application for their park rangers. What it allowed them to do is replace this very manual paper-based process for how they monitored and how they maintain all the different public areas within the city, like parks and playgrounds, streets, parking areas, et cetera, et cetera. So what they were able to do is they were able to bring their paper costs down, bring their waste dramatically down. All that stuff was significantly reduced, and processes that took 2 or 3 days before the mobile app became a same-day process. And the state of Michigan was so impressed with their mobile application, they actually awarded the city of Portage with the state's State of Michigan Innovation Award for innovative use of technology. Now remember, this was 3 years before the iPhone and 4 years before Android came out. So again, we've been doing mobile for quite a long time now. So getting back to mobile, and again, being a disruptive technology, the latest craze with mobile, obviously now you're hearing about it, is building native applications. Now some of you may remember that LANSA launched Long Range last year. It was the first and still only native mobile app builder for IBM developers. So with Long Range, IBM shops, you don't have to learn Objective-C for Apple. You don't have to learn Java for Android. Instead, LANSA makes it easy. You write one set of source code either in LANSA or RPG or COBOL, and we take care of deploying to both Apple and Android for you. So you write once, deploy twice, using a language that you know, or either that you know already, like RPG or COBOL, or is very easy to learn, like LANSA. Now, last year, the Consumer Products Division of Kawasaki, they're located in Lincoln, Nebraska, they used long range to arm their assembly line workers and their inventory specialists with iPads right on the production floor. Now, instead of assembly line workers manually creating pick tickets, what they call Kanban cards, if some of you are familiar with that, to get more parts at their workstation, what they had instead now are mobile team members just walking up and down the line using iPads and Bluetooth connected scanners to automate that entire process. Now, the project was wildly successful. It saved them about $3,500 per day in labor costs. And actually was so successful that it caught the eye of IBM and Common, and Kawasaki was awarded the 2013 IBM/Common Innovation Award at last year's Common annual conference, which I believe was in Anaheim, if I'm not mistaken. Now, as for long range, we're continuing to innovate the product. As of right now, long range deploys natively to Apple and Android, but we're hoping by the end of this year, we're going to have support for Windows 8 devices. So Intel-based laptops and tablets, that will make it a third deployment option for long range. So why is this important? Well, for those of you who are familiar with Gartner, they've coined this term called MEAP, M-E-A-P, which stands for Mobile Enterprise Application Platform. And MEAP must support Gartner's Rule of 3, which is to support 3 or more mobile operating systems. So think about this. How many other MEAPs do you think are out there that were designed specifically for IBM developers? I'll give you a hint. The answer rhymes with none. So as much as companies want to be able to embrace new technology, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say most companies can't afford to throw away the heavy investment that they've made in their existing systems. So what they need to do is they've got to figure out a way to modernize what they already have, and do so in the least disruptive way as possible. So what LANSA provides is 2 different modernization options. One's more tactical, and you'll see one's more strategic. So we'll start off with the tactical one. So LANSA has a product called Axes, which basically transforms any RPG or COBOL 5250 program into a rich internet application that can be accessed via multiple web browsers on multiple devices. That would be including mobile devices, without having to change a single line of your existing source code. So with Axes, companies can now modernize their user experience by not only improving the appearance of the application, but also improving and streamlining some of the business processes behind those applications. And that's where you really start to add value to modernization. It's not so much making it look pretty, but when you can streamline or automate something, that's where you can get some tangible ROI. So Axes also comes bundled with a couple of other products called, one's called the Spool File Manager, and the other one is a Data Explorer. The Spool File Manager is I think the title's pretty self-explanatory. It's a web application for managing your IBM spool files and output queues via the internet or internally via your intranet. Users can view, they can print, they can download, they can delete reports without having to install anything on their computer or any kind of plugins into their browser on their computer or their mobile device. The Data Explorer is a DB2 query tool that allows you to build and run queries against your IBM DB2 database, again, from a browser. So from here, you can query any DB2 tables or files. You can print the query results right there inside the tool, or you can copy and paste the results into other applications like, say, Microsoft Excel or something like that. Now, for companies looking for a modernization solution that could still address your immediate tactical needs, but also, more importantly, your strategic long-term modernization requirements, LANSA can help you out in this arena as well. So RAMP from LANSA is a combination, so it's a modernization tool that's more strategic than Axes. But it's a combination of some of the technologies, LANSA technologies, that we've already talked about earlier in the presentation, plus some new functionality to make it unique. So RAMP uses the visual LANSA framework. It uses axes, but it also uses this specific set of ramp tools that records the navigation path of your existing 5250 applications, allows you to nominate which one of those screens is what we call destination, the screen where the user can actually perform some work, and then snap that screen inside the visual framework. So just like before, we use the prototyping wizard to populate the visual LANSA framework and then use wizards to create all the search components. Then we use a special ramp tools to record the navigation path, as I just mentioned, to get to the screens where we want to be able to plug those inside of the visual LANSA framework. And then we take that final destination and we reface it. And we reface it with axes to make, again, to make it look modern, and then snap it inside one of the tab sheets of the visual LANSA framework. Now the benefit for the user, not for the developer, but for the end user, is that they never have to see those navigation screens again, those navigation screens prior to the one that you snapped into the visual LANSA framework. The engine behind RAMP is using some really cool technologies built into Axes called Axes Robot that allows us to execute interactive green screen programs in batch mode, if that makes any sense, and actually supply keystrokes to us. So we're able to take care of navigating all those screens on the behalf of the user and just take them directly to the particular screen where they can get some work done. Okay, so that's how that works. Now the reason that RAMP can be both a tactical and a strategic solution is because of this. With the first phase of your application, it can actually be completed relatively quickly, because what you could just do is create the visual framework, right, by running through the wizards, snapping in some of your existing 5250 screens into those tab sheets. And if you just do this, there's really no new development that's happening in this phase. Now, if you decide to stop here, and some of our customers do, then you're using RAMP more as a tactical solution. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Even from this current form, this phase 1 form of RAMP, your application is going to be a lot more elegant than anything you can do via refacing, because we're eliminating a lot of those navigation screens that I just talked about in your existing 5250 applications. You're creating brand new menu structures so users can easily navigate these programs, and you're adding new searching capabilities that's better than prompting and going through subfiles and stuff like that, et cetera, et cetera. Now, best of all, what RAMP allows you to do, even at this phase 1, is improve how your core system works. It dramatically improves the productivity of your core system, again, without touching a single line of your source code, because you're just running your existing applications in batch, even though they're interactive green screens. Then, going on to the next phase. So the next phase of our modernization project, we can start to add some more tab sheets and start to embed some additional functionality into the visual framework. Again, this now is considered new development. Okay. Now, additionally, maybe we use the old 80-20 rule and decide one of those refaced green screens could be a lot more productive if we replaced it with a brand new component with LANSA. We can do that. So we can go through and start to replace some of the tabs that currently host green screen programs with brand new components that are much more productive. Now, to me, this is really one of RAMP's greatest features, the ability that you can have a refaced legacy component sitting right next to a brand new component inside the same application driven by the same search controls. Plus, as you see here, you have the ability to swap out or add new components at any time without affecting how the other parts of the applications work. Now, eventually, after many more phases, here is the final version of our application, if there ever is such a thing, where we've swapped out every legacy refaced 5250 program with a brand new LANSA component. What this means is we've effectively re-engineered our entire application into a brand new system. So we're no longer shackled to any portion of that legacy source code, because everything's now been rewritten with RDML and LANSA. Everything is now running inside the LANSA platform, which means you're now platform agnostic. You can take advantage of all these different interface types and integration points to other technologies. You can take advantage of all the offerings that LANSA has to provide. Another side benefit for any of those folks on today's call who are, hanging on to and paying these ERP maintenance fees, even though that you've heavily modified the applications and you're not getting any value out of it. Once you've gotten to this phase, you can finally say goodbye to paying maintenance and cut off ties and start saving some money that way. Now, one of our business partners, this is a great story. They're called Mincron. They're down in Houston, Texas. They used RAMP so they're a partner of ours. So they have a solution. They have a wholesale distribution package that they sell to IBMI shops. Anyway, it was all green screen, and they weren't getting any new customers, so they decided they needed to modernize it. And they used RAMP to modernize it. And their new application looks so modern, and the functionality, some of the new functionality they've added is so good that they've actually signed up new customers that never had an IBMI before. So how often these days do you hear ISVs bringing new blood to the IBMI community? So they're bringing customers on board who are going out and buying brand new iron that never owned an AS400 or an I-Series or a System I or an IBMI before. It's not very often, and that's why I find this story to be so impressive. Integration. I'm going to say that this is a major pain point for any CIO, any IT director. Why? Well, because the information that runs their business is scattered across many different systems. It's built using too many different programming languages and data standards, and it's just linked by too many different manual processes. So LANSA Composer is a solution it's simple, it's cost-effective, and it's a great way to get business transactions in and out of your ERP system with less human effort. And how it can do that by automating the exchange of data, automating the exchange of documents between your systems, your applications, and your trading partners. Now, the design and the execution platform of LANSA Composer really revolves around the transport and transformation of data, in addition to some custom business processing that you can alleviate some manual processing steps and try to use computers to replicate that. So with LANSA Composer, you can capture, I like to combine words whenever I can. With LANSA Composer, you can capture, you can model, you can implement a whole set of different automated processes that, not unlike robots in a factory, are more predictable and really future-proof your manual processes more than any human ever could. So with LANSA Composer, what you can now do is start to replace any of your batch processing or your I'm going to call it semi-automated file transfers, where you're transferring things via computers, but somebody's pressing a button, so it's not truly automated. And you can do this with real-time interfaces between applications and databases, regardless what servers they're running on. So the end result that you get here is obviously going to be a more efficient operating environment in which people and their employers become more productive. Example, STRATTEC Security Corporation, the world's largest producer of automotive locks and keys. They used LANSA Composer to retrieve orders from iConnect. iConnect is their hosted EDI vendor, so they don't have EDI on premise anymore. They're doing it in the cloud. So they're using Composer. So before Composer, somebody would download a spreadsheet of these orders and punch them into the system. So now what they're doing is they're using Composer to go out and grab about 60 to 100 EDI orders every day from one of their large wholesale aftermarket customers. So according to Pete over at STRATTEC, because they're using Composer now and because they're not manually punching in these orders into their back-end ERP system, they're saving over 25 hours per week by automating this process. Again, using LANSA Composer to interact with iConnect and then interact with your data entry system. Another example, customer, Robinson Manufacturing. They use LANSA Composer to validate and correct the street level address and the classification information that they use when they interact with UPS. Why? Well, because UPS charges them when it's wrong. $2 for every invalid classification and $8 for every incorrect address. Now, these fees are on a per package charge, not a per shipment charge. So with Composer, their charges from UPS are now less than 20% of what they used to be before they put in the LANSA Composer project. It's saving them, as you see in the screen, $6,000 a month. So as you can see with these two different customers, companies can save substantial money and time by automating some of our manual processes using a product just like LANSA Composer. Now, besides having development and integration tools, LANSA also has a suite of pre-built solutions. We've decided to build solutions after using our services team to implement the same project over and over again at many different companies, finally a light went off and said, hey, why don't we turn this into a product, into a package? Now, I'm not going to go into great depth on these solutions because there's just a ton of information available on each one of these on the LANSA website. I just want you to know that these solutions exist and they're available, so you don't go and start building one from scratch. Okay, so the first one is something called LANSA Commerce Edition. It's a turnkey business-to-business and business-to-consumer desktop browser solution that's fully integrated with and extends any IBM back office ERP. Takes them directly to the web. Doesn't matter what the ERP is. J.D. Edwards, BPIX, Mapix, or even homegrown systems. And again, it's deployed already in hundreds of IBM sites across the globe already. The next one is something called CE Mobile, which is short for Commerce Edition Mobile. And what this is a sales enablement native mobile application written with long range that's available on Apple and Android. So what it allows salespeople to do is take their iPads, their Android tablets out on site, create orders, look up information, all real time without having to open up their laptop. Now, while CE Mobile may be a fairly new solution for LANSA, we just released it last year, the underpinnings, the componentry from which Commerce Edition is built, mobile is built upon, the product we just talked about above this one, Commerce Edition, it's reusing a lot of that internal componentry. So that, the engine, if you will, behind it, it's been in production for a decade now and at 100 of different organizations. So the important parts are already proven. LANSA has something called Workflow Framework, and what this is it's a really robust solution for automating and monitoring business processes. So these are some of the processes where humans are involved, and just to make sure that as being a human, sometimes we get sidetracked and we don't follow up routinely with our tasks. This allows you to monitor and maintain what's going on. So it's highly configurable. It's database driven. And again, it's a workflow application that can be really tailored to fit any organization's unique needs and integration requirements. It includes whole workflow life cycle, management of like event initiation, workflow and enactment, as well as event notification and latency monitoring for people who are slacking, and document management, if you can actually create a document along the way if you wish. There's key checks and balances. There's forwarding and escalation. So if it has been sitting on someone's desk too long, it can escalate it up to their manager. And most importantly, tight integration with other business applications and other business processes and other sets of data that are out there. LANSA has this thing called a executive dashboard. It's a web-based executive dashboard that really delivers the pulse of your business to you in real time, and it provides that valuable information that upper management, the key decision makers need, most importantly in a format that works for them. Okay, so we can now present data to them, KPIs, key performance indicators. We can present this information in a way that management can just quickly assess the metrics of the business and make more effective decisions for improvement. The last one I'm going to talk about is, a lot of people don't know this, LANSA actually has an ERP, a full functioning ERP. What we do is we call it open source, not open source like Linux or something like that. It's open source in the terms that once you buy the ERP and then you get the source code, there's no maintenance fees behind it. You're in full control of the application. It's all written completely in LANSA's high-level language, which means it's going to be easy to maintain, easy to extend. It's already pretty comprehensive. It has rich business functionality. It has an executive dashboard like you kind of saw there. It has advanced workflow. Again, it uses all the desktop integration, flexible user queries and reports, everything you expect from a LANSA solution built into the ERP already because it's built using LANSA technology. Another item that I think people are not that aware of is LANSA has actually quite an extensive services department. When you combine the strength of our software platform with our pool of talented and experienced developers and project leaders, LANSA really, that's what enables us to deliver some pretty high-end, pretty well-known projects to thousands of companies and all over the world for IBM the whole ecosystem. So today, again, our talent pool has a pretty wide range of skills in a variety of different technologies and platforms, and again, our professional services teams, what they bring, what the value add is just decades of enterprise experience, decades of leadership, and the ability to deliver world-class applications to our client base. So to summarize, the hallmark of the LANSA software development platform really is, in my opinion, is business agility. Our business is built on enabling customers to be able to adapt to these disruptive technologies that we're talking about, and to do so with ease. Now, this is obviously a claim. It's pretty well supported by our 25-year-plus track record. Okay, so we've come a long way since 1987, but it's so unfortunate that a lot of people still think of us, oh, you're that green screen case tool company with its proprietary language and that repository thing. It's just a shame that people don't realize how much we've evolved over the last quarter century. So you've made a pretty wise investment in the IBM, and you know what, so has LANSA. Our customers have discovered that the LANSA methodology is much better than conventional development because their applications are easier to change. They're not tied down to a particular infrastructure or configuration. They get tailored systems in less time than it takes to implement the package. Their existing investments in code and data and skill sets are able to be reused, and thereby obviously saving the company money and reducing technical risk. Their applications can easily connect and share data and talk to other systems via standard interfaces. So regardless whether you're looking to develop new solutions, modernize legacy solutions, integrate or extend business applications, LANSA has a pretty strong solution set available, and we think somewhere inside that product catalog is the right product for you. Again, we've been around for 25 years. We have 7,000 customers in 65 countries. We have 200 employees worldwide, 300 business partners. LANSA by far is the largest IBM tools vendor worldwide. IBM has told us this many, many a time. Well, that's it for me, Sherry, so I am going to pass control back to you. Thanks, everyone, so much for hanging out for the 45 minutes.
All right, thanks, Dave. So at this point, what we're going to do is move on to the question and answer session. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into that questions window on the attendee control panel. If for some reason you don't feel comfortable asking a question in this type of forum, you can email me your questions at sherry.barnabas@lansa.com. I've got that up on the screen. Or you can contact me directly at 630-874-7071. Now, while we wait for a couple more questions, I've also put a URL up on the screen, which is www.lansa.com, and you can share this link with your technology people so they can learn more about the products that we discussed today. Now, we really do value your feedback and appreciate you taking the time to fill out the survey. So for attendees in North America, if you fill out the survey, you can choose between a LANSA mobile phone cradle or a USB car charger for participating in today's webinar. And then for those of you who are outside of North America, a LANSA representative from your region will be in touch. Now, I do know, Dave, that we have another offer. Would you like to tell them about that?
Yeah, as a thank you for, for attending today's webinar, we're giving away some free technology assessments. Just simply email us if you'd like to set up an appointment to see, where you are today, where you want to be in the future, and figure out how to get there. It's really it's an outstanding opportunity to sit down with one of our core technology experts and just really assess your current application development strategy. So again, just give us an email if you're interested in that.
Thanks, Dave. Just as a reminder, you can also email us if you'd like to see a demonstration of any of the products or solutions that Dave covered today. It does look like we have a couple of questions here, so I am going to pass it back to Dave for questions.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. I got a few questions here. Just continue to ask, or type, I should say, as I answer these. If I don't do a satisfactory job answering your question, don't be afraid to call me out on it, and I'll try a second pass at it. So I'm just going to take them in the order that they came in, and again, don't be afraid to continue to ask questions as I go on here. So first question is from Laura. Laura asks, is long-range for LANSA or for RPG? That's a good question. There are actually two versions of long range. So again, long range, for those who don't remember, long range is the native mobile app builder for IBM. Again, it's not for building web pages that run in the browser on a mobile device. These are for building true native mobile apps that are downloaded from an app store. There are actually two versions, one for RPG or COBOL developers and one for LANSA shops. So if you're not a LANSA shop, then obviously you can still use long range by developing with your existing skills. That'd be RPG and or COBOL with a combination of DDS. There's some DDS in there you can use. The LANSA version of long range doesn't use DDS. You'll solely be using your RDML skills. Got a question here from Mark. Do you ever look at the code generated by LANSA? I don't, and I wouldn't recommend anybody does. You shouldn't have to for any platform, because Visual LANSA, it has a syntax checker. It's got an inline debugger. You should never, ever, ever have to get down to the code that was generated. You should just always be inside the LANSA environment, inside of Visual LANSA. I can't think of any reason why you should have to drop down into the generated code. Question from Jim. Do you have to use the repository? No, you don't have to. You can write logic inline code just like you would with any other 3GL language. Obviously, you won't be getting the benefit of having all your rules stored in one place. But yeah, there's nothing forcing you to use a repository, but obviously the more you do, the faster you can build applications because you're not writing that code, and the faster you can maintain your applications because you're going to one spot to make those changes. Got a question from Kim. Can you read data from more than one database at a time? Kim, you sure can. With Visual LANSA, what we allow you to do is basically build or import files and tables from any other database source you want. Once you have those file field definitions or table column definitions loaded into the LANSA repository, you can connect to any server you want and read that information from those servers, from those database management systems. It does not have to be, when the program's running, all the data can only come from one server. You can have it hit 10 servers if you wanted to. And the cool thing is, if you have LANSA on all those servers, and there was a repository on all those servers, when you hit update, and then when the update hits those 10 servers, all the validation logic will still be adhered to, even though it's going to 10 different back-end servers. So to make a long answer short, yes, you can do that. Got a question here from Kevin. Can one set of source code run on all the different servers and interfaces you mentioned? That's a good question, and the definitive answer is kind of. There is a certain type of program that you can write that is server and interface agnostic, but when you do that, the feature set and the functionality really goes down to the lowest common denominator, which unfortunately is going to be the green screen, right? Because that is the ultimate in terms of low functionality. So there will be some limitations to do that. But that said, for each of the interface types or platforms you can write to, there is optimized language or coding styles you can use to take advantage of native features for the device or for the server or for the interface to help you get a better user experience. But when you do that, obviously you're writing code several times because it's different optimized versions. The good news is that LANSA has ways of modularizing code into reusable parts, components, if you will, that really helps you minimize the duplication of effort. So you're really just going to be coding, optimized flow within the application instead of actually doing some core functionality, because you can put those off into reusable components that can be used by many different applications, not just the one that you're writing a custom optimized interface for. Well, looks like that's all the questions we got for today. I just want to thank everybody so much for attending. Great turnout. Hope to hear from everybody again in the future. Take care. Back to you, Sherry.
Thank you all again for attending today's presentation. Now, when you leave today's meeting, don't forget that the survey is going to pop up. So if you have any pop-up blockers on, make sure to turn them off or temporarily allow the window up here so that you may complete that survey. With that, have a great day, everybody. You may now all disconnect.